keep a storm from coming. In his sermon, Ministry at the End of the World, Dr. Elias Ortega, the president of Meadville Lombard Theological School, writes, "The world seems to always be coming to an end. Whether fires devour our forests, or raising waters claiming dry land, or by unbridled unleashing technological innovations towards each other and nature, the world as we have come to know it will cease to exist. It is very likely that in the future, whether 1, 2, 3, or more generations away, it's hard to tell, but our world will be no more. There seems to be very little within our power to prevent this reality, the apocalyptic end of our world. Our efforts may be too few and come at too late a time for survival. What future could this be, but no future at all?" And he goes on to say, "These may not be the words you were expecting to hear on a day when you all gather together here. Perhaps you were hoping to hear that in spite of the sign of the times, in all manner of things, all will be well. Alternatively, maybe you were expecting to receive a roadmap of sorts to help you navigate your way through the ebbs and flows of uncertainty before you once called a future. But I cannot give you those words. It would be irresponsible of me to do so. Even though we may survive this world, still, we cannot be sure that things will turn out well. We may arrive at our destination still, but the road will be arduous, and the goal might not be what once was imagined, a place to reset from all of our labors after a faithful journey on fulfillment or a calling of our service. What does it mean to show up in a world that seems hell-bent on pushing us down? A world that, despite our best efforts, despite our deepest longings and our hard work and our persistence, seems to move toward destruction time after time. How do we move forward when the obstacles seem insurmountable, when the problems of the world are most definitely bigger than any one of us and bigger than all of us? The great thinkers of this world, they've pondered these queries throughout the ages. We get directives from every inch of history and society. Some tell us to hold on. Some preach hope. Some meet these questions with hard logic. Some turn to the mystery of the divine. Some advise surrender, and some fight back. It's safe to say that we get pretty mixed messages, culturally speaking. And if I've learned anything from Will Smith and contemporary cinema, it's that there's always a way to fight and somehow reverse the end of the world. Now, on the other hand, for millennia, religious thinkers have been predicting the end of times, that it's happening no matter what. The band REM knows that the world is ending and they feel fine. Prince would have us party like it's 1999 because, as he says, party's over, oops, out of time. Science fiction has been playing in the sandbox of what the end times could look like for ages. But beyond the pages of historical texts, religious or secular, beyond songs or movies or dogmas, we know what it's like to live at the end of time because here we are living in it. And we've always been here. We've never not been living in the apocalypse. And the end of the world as we know it has come for us time and time again. Dr. Ortega, he continues, there are two things that I can say with certainty. One, the apocalypse is close at hand, meaning that it is likely that the days and nights of our shared world will come to an end. The other is that our shared faith calls us to prophetic witness, meaning that the end will come sooner if we choose not to fight for a future that might not yet be. He says, apocalypse is not just a declaration of the world coming to an end. Facing apocalypse with courage and faith is understanding that it reveals other possible ways of being, of acting, and living in the world while we still have time. I've come to imagine apocalypse as an intersection of the end and the beginning. The chaos that accompanies the necessary changes that characterize our lives and communities and our global village. It's a clash, a jarring meeting at the crossroads, a storm. And we find ourselves yet again in the midst of that storm. Now, as anyone would, we all yearn to survive the storm, perhaps even avoid it if we can. And as people of conscience and people of faith, we yearn not to only survive the storm, but to bring one another into shelter. But what if there is no shelter? With each disaster, with each heartbreak, with every injustice that we witness and endure time and time again, a little bit more of our illusions fall to the wayside and are washed away. The illusion that everyone is equal, the illusion that we all matter, the illusion that our voice counts sometimes gets wiped away. And within the absence of each illusion, a piece of the truth is revealed. Truths about our world, truths about our systems, truths about ourselves. The Black liberation theologian James Cone writes, "Truth cannot be separated from the people's struggle and the hopes and dreams that arise from that struggle. Truth is that transcendent reality disclosed in the people's historical struggle for liberation, which enables them to know that their fight for freedom is not futile." What is the reality in the storm of our world today? What truths reach out to us in the chaos? We find ourselves at that intersection that we know all too well. No matter where we find ourselves in our lives, no matter our situation or circumstance, we know that intersection deeply. Those of us who have faced grief and loss, we know that intersection of end and beginning. We know the slow, painful dance of starting a new chapter, a new life, in the absence of something that made us who we are. We know the longing for something comforting, something we can hang on to, something that tells us that it's going to be okay. And we know the sting of reality when we realize that okay is a fleeting state. And we know the acceptance when we move into the new shape of our lives that begin to take shape as we move forward. I think of hospice chaplains whose job it is to work at the intersection of end and beginning, to be with the dying. I think of midwives who work at that same intersection to usher in life. Those who accompany the storm by being in it, not to change or to fix or to undo, but to accompany and to bear witness. I also think of those who weather the storm, those who prepare shelter and find and create sustenance, those who monitor and analyze and protect and educate, those who build paths to safely navigate the storm, those who wait at the intersection with welcome and hope and inspiration. And I think of those who brave the storm, who welcome it, who choose it, those who mine truth and meaning and purpose from within that storm. And I think of those who can't escape it, those who are vulnerable, for whom little power and agency has ever been granted when the storm is actually all that they ever have known. I think of us all there with one another, with our various roles and capacities, our tactics and wisdoms and our confusion. And then, in that sense, like Dr. James Cone tells us, our work is not futile. The fact that despite being knocked down, despite the helplessness that any of us could feel, despite imperfections and mistakes, we remain in that intersection ready to face the storm time and time again. In fact, I believe the impact of apocalyptic chaos propels us into the storm in a way with rigor and readiness more and more each time. In this congregation alone, our social justice groups are gearing up to face voter suppression head on. to green our building, to aid in sanctuary, to create sustainable ecological environments, to work with the larger association on divestment resolutions, to educate one another and learn together what it means to be anti-racist, to shore up gun control measures at the local level. River Road has giving partnerships with community organizations that center those in the margins, that are led by those who are the most impacted. We are in the storm, and we ain't going nowhere in that storm. We're living into those words of Dr. Ortega, that facing apocalypse with courage and faith is understanding that it reveals other possible ways of being, of acting, and living in this world while we still have time. The point is, we can be in the storm. We're in the storm, and that's okay, because within the storm, we have faith. Not faith in something unseen or something yet to happen, but faith in each other. A faith put into action. The faith that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of when he says, a faith that gives us courage to face the uncertainties of the future. He says it'll give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds and our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, we will know that we are living in the creative turmoil of a genuine civilization struggling to be born. Underneath the ashes of apocalypse and within the flurry of the storm, our beloved community reveals itself to us. It reaches out to us asking, begging, demanding to come into existence. It invites us into the chaos of apocalypse, and it guides us through the storm. Perhaps even that storm is its birthplace. And you can't keep a storm from coming, and that's the good news. So bring it on. May it be so. Blessed be.